Taysom Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, T. Higgins. Those are names of guys that help you win your week. But in today's video, we're talking about 6+ names that lost you your fantasy matchup. And we're going to decide on a scale of 1 to 10 how big the panic meter is on these names. Starting off with Deebo Samuel. Man, I'm not going to lie. I've been wildly disappointed in Deebo Samuel since the Ayuk injury. I definitely anticipated him being much, much better than this. This last Sunday, this is the second straight week in a row where Jauan Jennings has dominated usage for this team. He has made Deebo Samuel look like the clear wide receiver 2 again and again and again. I mean, Jennings this last week led the wide receiver room in snaps. He played 60 out of 63, 95% snap rate. And route participation, he had a 97% route participation rate, and in targets with 10. By the way, he had a 38.5% target share, which is absolutely ridiculous. 11 targets in back-to-back games, I'm pretty sure. The guy's on an absolute tear right now. And if you look at the averages since the bye week, Deebo Samuel versus Jauan Jennings, I mean, Jauan Jennings is almost doubling his targets from 6.5 to 11. Receptions, he's almost doubling again from 4.5 to 8.5. Receiving yards, he's almost doubling again. Fantasy points per game, over doubling. Jauan Jennings averaging 21 points per game while Deebo's under 10. I mean, this is exactly what you were hoping for from Deebo Samuel when Brandon Ayuk went down. The issue is Jauan Jennings is essentially Brandon Ayuk for this team, and they are featuring him exactly how they would feature Brandon Ayuk. You can see his snap share is consistently going up and up and up. And in the last couple weeks without Ayuk after the bye week, he has been that dude. And here's what makes this even worse for Deebo Samuel. We'll talk about if we should panic or not, but here's what makes it worse. There was no George Kittle this week. The guy who was always getting a touchdown, who was always getting targets and accounting for receiving yards, Kittle wasn't out there. Deebo should have been even more relevant in a neutral game script the entire way through. They even lost this game. I mean, look, here's the deal. Deebo is a guy that can go off for 40 points any single week, but we have to be honest with ourselves and say maybe there won't be consistency anymore, especially when Kittle's back. CMC is healthy now. My panic meter is at a 5 out of 10. And if we go over to the Flock Fantasy website, I've updated my rest of season rankings. I don't think this is bold. I don't think it should be bold, but I've got Jauan Jennings 2 spots ahead of Deebo Samuel as my wide receiver 20. And I've got Deebo Samuel here as my wide receiver 22. I'd rather have names like Cortland Sutton over Deebo and Zay Flowers and Harrison and Pickens and Devontae Adams. These are names that I would rather have ahead of him. But at this point, I mean, 2 weeks in a row, the coaching staff has talked about how they want him to play the Brandon Ayuk role. I struggle to see how we don't have Jauan Jennings ahead of Deebo Samuel at this point of the year. The second player that let you down this week, his name is Jonathan Taylor. Johnny Tay. It did not work out well. This Sunday, he was drowning in opportunities. I mean, the guy could not get off the field. He had so many touches, so many carries, but there are a couple reasons it didn't turn into fantasy points. Firstly, you can see he played 63 out of 70 snaps. Perfect. He had 24 carries. Perfect. He had another target through the air. Perfect. 25 plus touches a week. That is a potential for a league winner, right? But here's the issue. Number one, lack of targets. Now that there's no Joe Flacco and it's, they put Anthony Richardson back in. When Anthony Richardson's in trouble, he is more likely to use his legs, use his mobility to get out of danger rather than dumping it off to Jonathan Taylor. That's a problem. Number two, Anthony Richardson's a goal line vulture. We saw it this week. He had 2 rushing touchdowns inside the 5 to 10 yard line area in the red zone, and that could potentially happen each and every week. That's not good for Johnny Taylor. Number 3, drives are not being sustained in Indianapolis. They are scoring a lot of points, but often on third down, they just have this inability to convert. And number 4, they are barely playing in any formation outside of shotgun. It is so confusing to me. I guess they're trying to make it simple, but I don't know what Shane Steichen's goal is here, but they're playing in shotgun for the majority of their snaps, and it's giving Jonathan Taylor no opportunity to build up momentum heading into the offensive line, right? I mean, they're in shotgun, they hand it right off to him, and then he has no opportunity really to use vision, to find a lane that the offensive line is opening up for him, and to kind of burst through that hole. I don't understand why they're doing it. I'm struggling to see this turning around quickly, but what I will say is he's drowning in opportunities like we mentioned, so we're not going to panic too heavily. I'd say 5 out of 10 is a panic meter. And if you look at my rankings over on the Flock Fantasy site, I currently have him ranked around running back 13. He is no longer in that top 12 conversation. I can't put him amongst the names of the Ken Walkers, the Kamaras, the Bijans, the Gibbs. It's just not possible the rest of the season. He's more in the tier with the Montgomerys, the Hubbards, the Aaron Jones, the James Cooks, the James Connors of the world. Because at this point, let's be honest, it's just he's not in the top 12 combo. So 5 out of 10 panic meter. All right, the third player we're a little bit panicked on right now is Jaylen Waddle. Man, it has not worked out at all for Jaylen Waddle this year. This Sunday, he led wide receivers in snaps and in routes run, but he only had 3 targets. That is not what you want to see from your receiver, all right? You do not want to see a guy who's on the field all the time, but not getting targeted very much. I mean, since week 8, which is when Tua returned, Jaylen Waddle is averaging 4.3 targets per game, 2.8 receptions per game, under 35 receiving yards, and 7.6 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. Guys, no, this is not this year. This is since Tua returned. So there's no excuses anymore. I mean, by the way, if we look at the entire year, there's only 1 week where you've been happy to play Jaylen Waddle, and that was week 1. Every single game since week 1 has been under 9 PPR fantasy points. How could you not be completely panicked here? I mean, this is a strong 9 out of 10. I don't know if you can start Jaylen Waddle again this year. I don't know if you'll ever have confidence to start him again this year. I mean, we're in week 12. Let's be honest with ourselves. Jaylen Waddle is not who you drafted him to be, and we need to adjust. And a big reason why is because of Devon Achane. Guys, Devon Achane is averaging 6.5 targets per game when Tua is playing the quarterback position. That's a 17-game pace of 111 targets, and it is cock blocking Jaylen Waddle completely. All right? Jaylen Waddle is no longer relevant. It's really painful. It's confusing considering you just paid him in the offseason, but it is unfortunately the reality. So when we look at a name like Jaylen Waddle, we got to go way down from when we were just talking about Deebo Samuel. We got to go into the lower 30s now in my rankings. My wide receiver 37, that might not be low enough, honestly. I'm comfortably taking Jacoby Myers, Tillman, Downs, Dell, McConkey, Hopkins, Thomas, Mooney, Jason, DJ Moore. All these guys I'm comfortably taking over him. Honestly, I'm not even sure some of these guys below him should be below him. I feel like I'm being a little bit generous to Jaylen Waddle because I just don't see a light at the end of the tunnel for any consistency. All right, number 4 player, and it is truly time to say goodbye. Thank you for your service, Kareem Hunt. What a run it was. Let's salute him. Let's give him a couple seconds of silence here as an honorary thank you. Thank you, Kareem Hunt. Thank you for your service. Look at the run this guy went on. From week 5 onwards, we have so many games over 18 fantasy points. Right? Week 5 with 18, then 22, then 13, then 18, then 17, but it's over. It's all over, ladies and gentlemen, because around the NFL and multiple other news outlets have reported that Chiefs running back Isaiah Pacheco is expected to be healthy in time for Week 12's game versus the Carolina Panthers. So that means that even if Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are splitting time, it makes this backfield irrelevant. It doesn't mean Pacheco is going to be a league winner. They might both have an important role, but it definitely completely destroys Kareem Hunt's value. This is a 10 out of 10 panic. He goes all the way down to, let's have a look as we scroll down here, my RB 36 in my rankings. I'd rather have Jaylen Warren, Javonte Williams, Nick Chubb, Rico Dowdle, Pacheco himself, Bucky Irving, Tony Pollard. I mean, at this point, it's not like Kareem Hunt's been super efficient and dynamic and explosive. Let's be real with ourselves for a second. He has been a volume-based play. He's not been dynamic. I mean, multiple games under 4 yards per carry, a couple games under 3 yards per carry. The guy has just been getting the job done based off of vibes and touches. All right, if you take away this guy's touches, half of them, there's just nothing really there. So it's unfortunate, but it's time to say goodbye, and it's time to say thank you for your service. All right, moving on. Let's talk about scary Terry McLaurin. This is a throwback to Thursday Night Football. I got to be careful with my words because that was the most frustrating game I've seen from the Commanders this entire season. What a strange game. I mean, Terry McLaurin was outsnapped by Noah Brown. He had less routes run than Noah Brown. He had less targets than Zach Ertz. He had less targets than John Bates. The second tight end in the Commanders had more targets than Terry McLaurin. Noah Brown doubled his targets. Olamide Zaccheaus had the same amount. Same with De'Ami Brown. Austin Eckler had 9 targets. Okay. I was so furious watching this game, man. It wasn't on Terry. It wasn't really his fault. He had 0 targets in the first half. Give the man a damn chance, right? Like, put some freaking layups into the game plan. Because for a lot of the game, they had him in double and triple coverage. I mean, you can see an example here on your screen. They were really focused on Terry McLaurin. But give the man some damn layups. Give him an end around, a quick slant, something over the middle, a screen pass, something to get your most valuable player on offense involved, right? But look, I'm not that concerned, and here's why. There's some good matchups upcoming, and he has been consistent for pretty much the entire season before this game. Before week 11, guys, let's remember he was a wide receiver 7 in fantasy football, averaging over 15 points per game. My panic meter is a 2 out of 10. We're not going to panic here. And if we go over to my rankings, we can see him comfortably inside my top 15, right around the Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, George Pickens range, right below Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, and DK Metcalf, and Mike Evans, sorry. All right, we're going to talk about some honorable mentions, but the last thing we need to talk about here is Tony Pollard. Pollard led the way, but Tajay was really involved and a bigger role than we maybe anticipated. So here's the thing, Tajay left the game with an injury, so we'll have to monitor that. But this week, you can see Tony Pollard, 37 snaps to 26 for Tajay. That's a big chunk taken away. 15 versus 12 routes, 4 targets versus 3 targets, 9 carries versus 3. So Tajay Spears is playing a important role in this backfield, and I don't anticipate that stopping anytime soon. Of course, barring injury, which he did leave the game with an injury, didn't come back. So we'll have to wait and see. But if you're going to rely on Tony Pollard in the playoffs, and they're going to split time like this is a panic for me. This is a 6 out of 10. We're not going to go full, balls to the wall panic mode here, but 6 out of 10 is a solid panic meter. And if I look at my rankings rest of season, I've had to move Tony Pollard down to RB 27. Does that feel fair to you? I mean, I think we'd all rather have Ramondre and Najee and Rashad White and Dobbins and Brian Robinson and Swift and Chase Brown and Tyrone Tracy. So this is kind of where he's landed, especially anticipating, a name like Tajay Spears playing into his workload. And to end the video today, we will talk about honorable mentions. Here are 5 other names that definitely hurt you this week. Russell Wilson. Here's the deal. It wasn't really Russell Wilson's fault. The Ravens couldn't score a damn point to save their lives, so they really didn't need to throw the ball at all. That's really what hurt Russell Wilson this week. Kirk Cousins, it was a terrible matchup versus Denver. Shouldn't be surprised. Don't worry about that. Kyren Williams has not scored a touchdown since Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua have both been healthy. Something to monitor moving forward. I'm not too worried about him. Garrett Wilson, I think you'll see up and down weeks pretty consistently rest of the season for him. And then Cedric Tillman, it did not work out for Cedric Tillman this week, but the targets were still there, so I wouldn't panic too hard just yet. So I appreciate you guys watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button and show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. You'll notice I didn't do a waiver video this week. Why? Because let's be honest for a second, the waiver wire is butt-ass naked. If anyone is telling you that the waiver wire is exciting this week, they're lying straight to your face. The waiver wire is naked. There is no value to be found on the waiver wire in most leagues. Maybe you're in a smaller league. If you're in an 8 or 10 team league, sure. Okay. But ultimately, for most people, the waiver wire is dead. That's why I went with this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. By the way, if you see my expert consensus rankings, if you want to see expert consensus rankings for free and things like the My Team Analyzer, like the trade calculator, if you want to see all those things for free, then become a member with the promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, on the Flock Fantasy website. You can check out the description. You can also check out the pinned comment if you have any question about fantasy you want to ask us through the site. I appreciate you for watching. We'll see you soon. Let me know who you're panicked about in the comments below, and if I missed anybody, and we'll talk it through all of them. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.